how to find love after a failed relationship. Hello and welcome to this episode of How to Love Successfully with me, Dr. Marie Kovanen. I'm a registered psychologist and a conscious dating coach. This is a podcast for high-achieving women who are looking for a loving long-term relationship. Perhaps in your past, you have experienced heartache, and maybe you are now thinking about dating again. This podcast is for you if you want to hear more about how to consciously create a loving relationship in the future from day one. How to date consciously. We will be talking about everything and anything that affects you and your relationships, and especially dating. So today our topic is how to go about finding love after a breakup, after a painful divorce. And my guest today is Natasha Caleel, and she will be talking about her experiences of finding love after divorce and the realizations that she has had after her first marriage broke up and when she then met her current husband. And we will also be talking about blending families and how to create the love life that you want when you've been hurt in the past. But before we go into the interview, I would love to tell you about the secrets to successful dating masterclass, a free masterclass that I ran recently, and the replay is still available if you would like to know what are the secrets, the science-proven secrets to finding love. And in this masterclass, I will be talking about common dating mistakes that especially high-achieving women make and how to avoid those. I will be talking about the secrets to finding love with a compatible person, how to date in a way that feels good for you. You can email me just with the word masterclass, and I will be sending you the link to the masterclass then. And the details will be in the show notes. But now let's go into the interview. Hello and welcome to this episode of How to Love Successfully. Today we have another wonderful guest and we'll be talking about finding love after you've ended up having to rediscover what it is that you want in a relationship and after a failed marriage. So my guest today is Natasha Kleem. And welcome, Natasha. I'm really excited to have you here today.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to diving into this.
So let me tell you a little bit about Natasha. Natasha is a prenatal and postpartum corrective exercise specialist, occupational therapist, and owner of Fit Mama Santa Barbara, an online women's health coaching platform. Natasha is originally from Ontario, Canada. She moved to California in 2011 to start her career in health, and now, years later, after many pivots, both personally and professionally, she is running a full-time business, navigating life with 3 kids and blended family, and lives with her husband and dogs in the hills of Santa Barbara. So wonderful to have you here. And I'm sure our listeners are really curious about how all of this have happened for you. And so if we start by telling me a little about what it is that kind of what's going on, what is your life like as a business owner, first of all, and what's happening for you in that front at the minute?
Yeah, right now it has been very busy. So our 3 kids are 15, 13, and 8. And my husband and I both own our own businesses. We both work from home. I work a little bit in town. Our schedules are all over the place. Obviously, the kids' schedules are all over the place. So it's definitely a little chaotic around here these days. But when I look at where I've come from and what I'm doing now, it is super rewarding, so fulfilling. It's so nice to be able to have my own business, to
Mm.
make my own decisions, and yeah, just build a life around or build a career around what I want my life to look like as opposed to the other way around.
Amazing. Amazing. So let's talk a little bit about you were married before and what are the kind of life lessons. So could you tell us a little bit about, so how long were you married for?
Totally. So I'll start at the beginning
Mhm.
and work my way through my timeline
Yeah.
real quick. So when I graduated from my master's program, I was going to school in my hometown in Canada. And
Mhm.
I decided, I'm like, I need to get out of here. This is, I've been here far too long. So I picked up and I was 24 years old, moved to California, started working in healthcare, got a great job right off the bat. And really, I was feeling very confident about myself. I'm like,
Mm.
okay, I got it all figured out. And shortly after, maybe after being here a year or so, I met my first husband.
Mm.
And we met, we got engaged fairly quickly, like maybe 6 months later, ended up getting
Well,
married not
mm.
that much longer
Mhm.
after that. And it was great because once again, I was in this time of my life where I just thought I had it all figured out. I'm like, I moved to California where a lot of people want to be. It's beautiful.
Mhm.
I had the good job, got the husband, everything's working.
Yeah.
We shortly after had my daughter, who's now 8. And I now looking back realize that I was very young. I
Mm.
thought I knew everything and I didn't. And a lot of lessons came out of that. So I was married for, I think we were together for maybe a total of 5 years, and we ultimately decided to get divorced. There was a lot of factors that played into that. And I think a big part of it was just growing up and realizing what
Mm.
I wanted and what I didn't want. And the way I envisioned my life to be was very different than the way I was living it. So it was just interesting. And people always ask, what would you tell your younger self?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that I pulled out of my failed marriage was that opposites attract. And
Mhm.
it's great and it was super fun. But once you have kids and you have a life together and there's all these other responsibilities, sometimes it's very hard to remain on the same page when you just have very different ways of living your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm
And
sure you
so,
hear that a lot with your clients.
yes, yes, absolutely. And so how old were you when you met?
So I was maybe 25 or so and
Yeah.
then got divorced when I was 30.
Yeah. So at 25, like even brain development wise, we're literally
Totally.
just ready. We're
Yeah.
just about there. So when you are making decisions about who you want to be with, it's quite different from maybe then 10 years later.
Oh,
And so you are.
absolutely. Yeah.
So you came to this realization that actually, what was it about lifestyles maybe that was so different that you realized that it wasn't working out?
I will say, and this may be a fault, maybe a positive, I am a very type A kind of
Hmm.
person. We're organized, high achieving, always doing 101 things. I always have a plan.
Yeah.
And my ex husband is the complete opposite. But it was fun. So he's the kind of person
Mm.
who, hey, let's drop everything and fly to Catalina this weekend, or let's go out biking, or let's do this. He's really into extreme sports and always going after chasing that adrenaline. Right. And when we first met, that makes for a really fun dating experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Exciting. Yeah, yeah,
Very
absolutely. Yeah,
exciting. Right.
yeah.
And it's very easy to get wrapped up in that. And once we had my daughter, I was very much in the camp of we need to be on a schedule, we need to have a
Mm.
plan, everything we're looking at. I live by my agenda. Like everything is in my agenda. And if it's not, it doesn't count. And that was very hard for my ex husband because that's just not the way that he lives his life.
Mhm.
And I think, too, looking at our interests at the time, I thought, oh, this is great. We have different interests. We like to do different things. Like he loves mountain biking. I hate mountain biking, but I like to go out with friends. He'd prefer to stay at home. So I'm like, okay, this
Mhm.
is fine. But then when you're trying to build a social life together, it's very hard because I didn't want to go mountain biking all weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think those kind of extreme sports, they do take quite a lot of time too.
Yeah.
And when you have a family, then it becomes much, much more difficult to navigate that sort of thing.
And we started spending a lot more time apart, and that's when I
Mm.
started to realize that it just was not working, and all the red flags I ignored at the beginning were
Mhm.
starting to really show themselves and just starting to pull us apart instead of creating unity and moving us forward.
So what are the, I suppose, the lessons that you took, or what was it then how long were you single for? And when did you then, when you started dating again, how was
Yeah,
that experience for you?
so you're probably gonna laugh because
Mm.
I actually, when I got divorced, I moved out and I went to the mattress store because I had to get a bed.
Yeah.
And I said to the guy, I'm like, just give me a small bed. I am never getting laid again. Like, that is it. But I bought my little queen size bed. I'm like, this is perfect. It's just a 2-bedroom apartment for my daughter and I. It's all I need. And at the time I was doing CrossFit, and
Mm.
CrossFit is a very like community based
Mm.
workout. And so I had actually been working out with the same people for years. And there's my now husband, his name is Thomas. So we had been working out together for maybe 7 years. And it was always very platonic. I would see him at the
Mm.
gym. Hey, how are you? Duh, right. And it maybe, I would say it wasn't even that long after I moved out. I just started to notice that he was a little bit more chatty.
Yeah.
And so even though I had zero intention of ever dating anyone again, I truly just I'm like, "I have a 3-year-old, I'm not dealing with this, like, I can't." Eventually, he wore on me where we started talking, then we started talking a little bit outside the gym, and then finally, maybe 4 months later, he's, "Oh, you can I take you for dinner?"
Yeah.
And then it just developed really organically that way, which
Mm.
is interesting because I never did the online dating. I never dove into, okay, I'm going out to bars and trying to meet people because
Mm.
I had a full-time job. I had a 3-year-old. I spend a
Yeah.
lot of time working out
Yeah.
and taking care of myself. And so there just wasn't a whole lot of room for that.
Mm.
So yeah, I did not intend to be dating after my
Yeah.
divorce. But it's funny. Then you meet somebody and like I mentioned before, my ex-husband was very opposite to me, and
Mm.
that was fine, but now my current husband, one of the things I was looking for was somebody who saw things the same way as I do, somebody who
Mm.
organized their life the same way as I do, and
Mm.
that's what really stuck out to me when we first met was, "Oh my gosh, we're so much alike."
Yeah. Yeah. It makes life a lot easier
It
when,
does.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
even just like little things, like he knew if I had a really busy day at work, he would stop by at lunch and walk the dog, or he would just take initiative to go out and get stuff for dinner. And it was
Mm.
little things like that where I
Mm.
realized that is what I'd been missing in my life. I'd really been missing a true partner and
Yes.
somebody that supported me in my career goals, in my life goals, and the things that I wanted to achieve.
Yeah, that is so lovely. Really lovely. So what was it? I mean, there were obviously those sort of lifestyle choices and the awareness of you and considering you when,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I think a big part of finding really a big part of attracting the person that you wanna be with is figuring out who you are first.
Mm.
And I think that's something I spent a lot of time with, and that led to a lot of pivots in my life. So I had been working full-time in a nursing home. I was a director of rehab. I was very busy managing a staff, and it was a very high stress, unfulfilling job.
Yeah.
But that's where I was and what I wanted
Yeah.
to be doing at the time. And after my divorce, I quit my job because I'm like, this is not working for me.
Yeah.
I ended up doing something more flexible. I built my own business kind of on the side, started as a side hustle, and then grew that into a full time business. And I also just did a lot of things that I wanted to do because I think truly the key to happiness is taking ownership over your own
Mm.
decisions. And for the longest time, I was doing what everyone else expected me to do. I went to school because my parents expected me to. Not that I
Mm.
wouldn't anyways,
Mm.
but maybe I would have
Mm.
taken a
Mm.
different path. I got married because that's what I thought was expected. I
Mm.
played by all the rules and then found myself in a place where I didn't really know what I wanted and what I wanted my life to look like.
Interesting. And I think this is for so many women. that's the real difficulty, is that kind of following all of these, whether it's societal expectations, family expectations, and even ending up in the relationship that kind of meets on paper maybe
Yeah,
what's expected.
exactly.
But what about you as a person? So what perhaps were those realizations about you? What have you discovered about yourself, or what had to change for you to find then attract this right relationship for you?
Oh, totally. I think the number one thing that I discovered is that I'm the kind of person who always needs to be working on something new, to be learning new things, to be learning new skills. And that was something that was really missing from my life. I was putting so much energy into just maintaining the household, trying to have a good marriage, to be a good mother. And there wasn't a whole lot of space left for me to grow personally or
Mm,
professionally. And that's something that's really important to me. And so I realized that A, I had to make that space in my life. And B, I wanted to be with someone who would foster that. And
mm,
that's truly hard to find. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say, oh, yeah, there's all these men out there who are totally accepting of you going after your goals. But once I did find that, I realized how important it was. So when I look at my
mm,
husband today, he and I will give him 100% credit. He's the one that pushed me to just quit my job, my healthcare job, and was
mm,
like, "You're burning yourself out. You're burning the candle at both ends. You can't work all day in healthcare and then try to personal train in the mornings and the evenings. Like, this is not working. And I want you to take the jump and take that risk." And that meant so much to me because I think, honestly, if he hadn't given me that little push, I'd probably still
yeah.
be running around like a crazy person.
Yeah. Yeah. So someone who believes in you in some
Exactly.
ways, and it's a little bit pushy, but also supportive. And so there's that encouragement. And in that relationship, that's so important to have someone who supports your dreams. But yes, there may not be so many, but it only
Right.
needs that one person who is the right person for you.
Totally. And I
Yeah.
think it's interesting too is his background, he's been a lifelong entrepreneur. And so for him, that
Mm,
stuff is just that's how he lives his life. That's what you do. You
mm,
take risks. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You try something new. You're constantly pivoting and changing. And that was something that was really missing from my life. And something that I realized I like to learn new skills. I like to try new things. And if
mm,
it fails, it's okay. I think
yeah.
that's a perfectionist in me too, is like always playing it safe, but then you're really missing out on a whole lot of opportunities.
That is so true. And then now thinking about your previous relationship, maybe the priorities there were very different. So I can
Right.
totally see how
That was
that
the safe
relationship.
bet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe that was a relationship for that time in your life. But
Exactly.
then who you become as a kind of grown up person, really,
Right.
then your current husband, then it's a better match in that way. So how is it then you've got blended families? So how is that?
Yes.
How do you navigate that, your relationship in that? Because I can imagine
It's
it's tricky.
yes, I get asked this all the time because it can get very challenging when you both have kids from previous marriages. Because you have to remember that then when you marry someone, you're no longer just marrying that person, you're
Mm,
marrying their children, you're marrying their ex-spouse, you're marrying their
yeah.
family.
Mm,
There are so many different levels of complexity that come with that. And I'm not gonna lie, at first that scared me off a little bit.
mm,
And I was like, "Oh, like, I don't know if I wanna take on someone else's stuff."
mm,
And but I have to say his kids are delightful. They are
mhm,
amazing boys, and they are
mm,
so good with my daughter. And so that's what really sold me was, like,
mm.
this was an opportunity for her to have siblings because
Yeah.
she didn't have any siblings. The first year we lived together, we had a lot of kinks to work out.
Yeah.
We had some very differing parenting styles, which
Mm,
was challenging, right? Because especially coming in as the new spouse or the stepmom, I hate that word,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
as a stepmom, you really take a lot of the bad stuff without being able to
Mm,
really get the the credit for the good stuff.
yeah. And it is, of course, it's natural that kids would resist that
Of course.
transition
Of
initially.
course.
Yeah, but being in that and tolerating that, and obviously to a degree, and I suppose also parenting, I've got two boys. So
Yeah. Oh,
you,
yes.
they're both.
Very different.
having a girl.
That was a big change for me. I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, okay, boy energy. This is a whole new thing.
Yeah, it could be a bit crazy that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much
Yeah.
testosterone around.
And I think too, what I learned, and this was super key, because I think if we did not really come to this realization, our marriage would have failed right off the bat, was that setting boundaries with the exes
Mm,
was super important. Because when we first got together, there was a lot of blended boundaries, even on my
right.
side, on
Yeah.
his side. And you can't work on your relationship when you have all these other people interrupting
Yeah.
essentially
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think once we established that and once we came to better boundaries with our exes and like our time is our time and your time is your time.
Mm.
And even just the communication piece, like you don't have to talk to them all the time. It's okay to set some boundaries around that. I think that really helped our relationship and helped us figure out what our family dynamic looked like and how that worked.
But yeah, I can imagine it's a tricky piece to really navigate. And I'm sure there's been all sorts of different phases in that.
Oh, totally. And nobody likes you as a new wife. Like I will just admit that.
Yeah.
Like
But
it takes a while for people to warm up
Yeah.
to that, so it's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. And I guess if you, with that knowledge and accepting that it's a hard situation for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
But it can get better and we can learn to navigate this. And like you said, that those boundaries are probably like really essential piece
Mhm.
in there to have you two as a couple have that state to
Oh, absolutely.
figure out, because obviously couple relationship in itself is challenging and try to navigate that. But then let alone when you've got kids and then you, like you said, you add all the families to the mix.
Yeah.
And so it's
I will
challenging
say
and
the
tricky.
one positive thing of co-parenting is that we do get probably about 6 days out of the month that we have no kids. And I always tell people those 6 days save us because
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
very
lot.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, to just have some time one-on-one. Like right now,
Mm.
the next couple days, we don't have any kids here. And this is our time we go out on a nice date night. We spend time. We
Amazing. Yeah.
actually, because when all the kids are here and you have 3 different schedules, you know what it's like with multiple children, it's a lot. You don't get a whole lot of
Yeah.
time just for you. And so I think that's the trade-off with co-parenting
Mm.
is it is harder. It's much harder to co-parent in 2 households, but also you get that little bit of
Yeah.
time to reconnect. So that's always
That's amazing. That's amazing because then you can really dedicate that time to yourself and to your relationship.
and I'm
You
very
really-
protective of that.
Yeah, like you should be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's only understandable. So I guess that also helps you with knowing that then, okay, this might be a little bit crazy now, but in a whatever time we have this time and space for each other again. And we
Yeah.
can reconnect.
Which I think is important in any relationship.
Mhm.
And just the fact that we have that built in is really helpful.
Yeah.
And things get better as the years go on. Like I have to say, our first year of marriage looked very different than it
Mhm.
does now. The kids were younger. The exes were still very hostile.
Yeah.
Everyone's calmed down
Yeah.
now. It's much better.
So how long have you been married now?
So we have been married. We've been together about 5 years, married for almost 3.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not so new anymore for
Exactly.
everyone. Yeah.
Exactly. And everyone, like I said, the kids get along fantastic, which that makes all the difference.
Ah, that's
So,
amazing.
yeah,
That's
it's really nice to
amazing.
see.
Yeah. Yeah. And are they quite similar in age?
They're all within 6 years,
Mm.
and they all up until the older one went to high school, they were all at the same school, which
Oh, I think.
is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's very sweet that they won't see each other for extended periods of time sometimes because they're on different custody schedules.
Mm.
And I think it's so sweet to see them all come back together.
Well,
And my daughter, she misses them. Like, she misses
Oh,
her older
yeah.
brother. But on the other hand, she still gets some days that she's here just us, which
Yeah.
she likes that too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's nice. Been a special
Yeah.
time together.
Exactly.
So sounds really like in your household, it's so busy and everything. And is it the scheduling that and figuring out who's where and what have you? What is it that helps you to put it all together and run the household and so on.
Yeah. Number one, I have to say, because my husband is very on board with having a schedule, and if you think I'm type A, he's 10 times worse. So that is very helpful. And also, just we delegate our roles very well. So I am in charge of the scheduling and booking, whether it be making sure that the days line up with the kids, or if my daughter's here by herself, I said like she's at camp this week because I'm like, it's just going to be a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If we have everyone around, and just keeping that joint calendar. I have multiple calendars actually, but we have a joint family calendar. I have a calendar that includes my ex-husband so that he's in the loop on what's going on.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I do a little bit of micromanaging for everybody. But it keeps everything running
Yeah.
smoothly. And we've learned too, just communication wise, like my husband won't commit to something with the boys without checking with me first to make sure that we don't have something else going on, because that was an issue at the beginning of our relationship. Just you're used to parenting yourself. You're not
Yeah.
used to parenting with someone else. So of course he's, oh yeah, I can bring you here and do that and whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you can't because we have this with
Yeah.
Addison.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just that communication piece, I think, is really key. And that keeps everything running really smoothly. And also, the kids now are old enough where they have a little bit more autonomy. And so we try to instill that independence in them. Like with our 15-year-old, he's responsible for making sure he has a drive to go places, making sure that if he's making plans between his mom's house or his dad's house, that he talks to both of them. And I think that's important too, because if you're constantly trying to juggle everyone, it's just, it ends up, and it's not good for the kids. They need to learn how to be self-sufficient a little bit too.
Absolutely. And like giving responsibility and learning about what it means to be. And when you are then adults, you have to do these. And so learning really that at the same time. So what would you say is that to give advice to someone or maybe is coming out of that long-term relationship and then thinking about now wanting to find the right relationship? So what would you say those are the kind of key things really?
I think some of the key things that have stood out for me is, like I said, finding out who you are and what you want and what fires you up before you start looking for someone else. Because if we are looking for someone that's going to meet our needs, but we don't know what our needs are, it makes it very challenging. And then you end up just taking on what you think other people want from you. That was the number one thing I learned. The other thing, my mistake in my first marriage, is to take it slow. You don't need to rush into another relationship. Like even with my current husband, we didn't hang out with each other's kids for probably about 6 months. I did that intentionally because I wanted to make sure that this was going somewhere, that I wasn't just jumping into a rebound relationship and then my daughter would get to know him and then it falls apart, and I didn't want to deal with that. So we definitely took it slow at first, and we spent a lot of time just talking about what our future goals looked like. And I think that was really important and something that I didn't particularly do the first time around, because when I was 25, my future goals were to get married and live happily ever after. And I didn't know what those goals were, which at 30, after working for a while and really figuring out what I wanted my life to look like, we have a very different picture now of in 10 years when our kids are grown, what does our life look like? Because life with kids is still fairly short. You have a long time after that to be with the same person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so if your life only revolves around your kids and your family and you don't have any future goals or plans with your spouse, then what happens then? And I've seen that with a lot of my clients who are older, their kids leave the house, and all of a sudden they're like, I don't even know this person that I'm living with.
Absolutely. So many divorces happen around that sort of time.
And so that was something where I'm like, this is super important to me that we have, and not that the plan doesn't change, plans change all the time, but I at least know that my husband and I are on the same page in terms of what we want out of our life and what we expect of each other. I think that's really important too, is just that communication between what are your expectations? What does an ideal wife look like to you? What does an ideal husband look like to you? How do you split up the roles in your house? I think all those things are something that need to be talked about before you jump right in.
Yeah. Absolutely. So knowing yourself, taking it slow and communicating really about what you really want in a relationship, but what does that look like? I think that is so true. So many people do what I call is like autopilot dating. And
Yeah.
I've done that, like
Yeah.
literally jumping in and then fingers crossed, hope for the best. But, and then often what happens is that is the wrong relationship, or you haven't figured out who you are, and all of just so many difficulties
Many
come
things.
from that.
Totally.
So all of those things, and I think it's the pressure in today's modern society, everything's so fast.
Exactly.
And it's actually, if you take your time to get to know someone and you communicate about who you are and what you want and so on, you're going to save so much time because you're not wasting on the wrong person, but also your heart is being protected because you're not ending up in another kind of maybe repeat of the same.
Oh,
And so,
100%. And I think another big theme that came up, I was just thinking about this
mm,
as you were talking, was having the courage to be yourself, to ask for what you
mm,
want,
mm,
and the courage to fail too.
yeah,
Because I think if I had not learned these life lessons and grown up and had the courage to really, like I said, jump into a new career and pursue this relationship and
mm,
all those things, like, I knew it could fail, and I did it anyways, and I think that's
yeah,
really important because a lot of
yeah,
people after a failed marriage, they don't wanna try again because that
yeah,
sucks.
yeah,
Nobody
yeah,
wants to
yeah.
go through that again, so having that courage to really explore those
Mm,
opportunities and be upfront with what you want is very
yeah,
important.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That is such a beautiful message in so many ways. So if anyone wanted to get in touch and learn more about your work and everything that you offer, what's the best way of contacting you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on social media. It's at Fit Mama, MASB, like Santa Barbara. And on there, you can always DM me if you have any questions. I post a lot of content about prenatal and postpartum exercise and recovering after having a baby, and also just general fitness tips. I do have a free core challenge on there. If you
Hmm?
want to join my 12-day core challenge, the link is in all my bios on TikTok, Instagram, all of that. So that's always a nice one if you have young kids, you're trying to work out at home and you just want to get in 10 minutes a day, something like that is so key because we all know that self-care is very important to our overall health and well-being.
Absolutely. Amazing. And then all of those links will be in the show notes so that it will
Perfect.
be easy to get in touch with you. Thank you so much for this
Thank
interview.
you. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
It's been absolutely wonderful. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and get lots of encouragement from it. I would love if you could go and give this podcast a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. It's that way more women like you who are looking for a committed long-term relationship can hear this message. And my goal for this podcast, it really is to encourage and inspire for you to believe that there is love out there for you too, and to know how to go about it, how to go about finding it.